Welcome to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace, part of the Speed Sport Podcast Network, powered by My Race Pass. My name is Jeff Kent. Strap yourselves in, pull those belts tight. We'll take you on a journey from short tracks across America to super speedways and everything in between. Today's guest, a former stock car racing crew chief, as well as a former competitor in NASCAR. He's also the cousin of 1990 Daytona 500 champion Derrike Cope. His career as a crew chief began at the end of 1995 when he accepted a position at Jeff Bodine Racing. What followed were stints at Robert Yates Racing, the Wood Brothers, Kevin Harvick Inc., and Richard Childress Racing. In 2013, it was on to Junior Motorsports in the Nationwide Series to crew chief the number 5 car. In 2014, he was announced as the crew chief of the number 9, driven by Chase Elliott. In 2015, he left Junior Motorsports to accept his current gig as the competition director at JTG Daugherty Racing, where things are going pretty darn well, as they just won the 2023 Daytona 500 with driver Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and followed that up with a 12th place finish in California. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, Ernie Cope. Ernie, say hi to Mike Wallace.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Ernie. I think we're going to jump around. We understand you got to catch a plane here shortly, so it's going to be a little short version of what we normally do. But first of all, we got to go straight to the Daytona 500 and congratulate you and your team. And, man, that had to be just an overwhelming experience as in your position, your team, to win the Daytona 500.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's big. It's still hard for me to believe right now. And Ricky was leading with I-5 to go last year and got crashed. You just know how those things go at the end. Even though you're right there, you're just waiting for something to happen. And he always puts himself in a good position. He's extremely well speedway driver.
Yeah, well, that's great there. We're going to speed things up because of your time. Take me way back into time, Ernie. Everybody's heard your name. They know who you are. You used to drive race cars. Then you become a crew chief and just really, really good at your trade. But when was the first recollection, right? Recollection? Recollection, yeah, that too.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, about being involved in motorsports. Where were you? What age were you? And how'd you get started?
Right out of the womb.
Right out of the womb.
My father and uncle built race engines on the West Coast, and they both did drag racing and circle track. So when I was really young, I spent as much time at the drag strip as we did circle track racing. Then they got heavier in circle track stuff, late 70s, early 80s. And we've just been surrounded with it. And then a bunch of great short track racers in the Northwest. Derrike started driving like in 79, and his father and my father owned the engine business together.
Oh, okay.
And,
all right.
Yeah. So when it was time for once I graduated high school, decided I was going to try giving it a whirl, and did it for about 8.5 years. And then, I was pretty good at working on them and doing the chassis stuff, and moved back to North Carolina and done driving. And
so how do you just take yourself?
Short version.
You were going to become a driver, right? I mean, that was the first thing that you were going to do, was drive the race car?
That's what I wanted to do. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so what, if I may say, what happened there? Why?
Yeah,
I mean, you had some nice accolades out on the West Coast, Rookie of the Year, Most Popular Driver, all those type of things, and tell me why maybe it didn't work.
Well, I had full intentions of trying to drive on the East Coast, and what happened was built a truck to run truck series and try running some of those races when they were on the West Coast, because they used to do 7 or 8 on the West back in those days. So at the winter of 95, we built a truck and was going to run a little bit in 96, and we're at Portland Speedway. And I remember Dave Resendiz drove for Jeff Bodine, and they ended up crashing at Portland. And the next event was at Evergreen Speedway up in Monroe, which is just east of Seattle. And we're based in Tacoma, Washington. It was like right dead center in the middle between Portland and Seattle. So they asked if we had any shop space and to help, to fix on their truck and get it ready for Evergreen. So they did, and hung out with those guys all week, and it was just myself and my father and Chuck Glenn, guys who helped me since I started racing and working on my stuff. And we got our stuff all prepared. And Danny Dias, I remember, if you remember Danny, he was crew chief for Resendiz at the time. And
Yeah, I do actually. Yes.
yeah, a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he actually passed a few years back, but super good guy. Total racer. And then, I had to build my own motors. That's the only way I can afford to do it, right? I couldn't afford to buy them. So we maintained our own engines and worked on our own stuff, and went back from Portland. We pulled the motor out, checked the bearings, 'cause I had one engine there that was truck legal, and changed valve springs, all that stuff, did body work. And we get done, and Danny, we go to the next track, and Danny stops me and goes, "Hey, I told Jeff Bodine about you, and he told me to hire you." I said, "Told him what about me?" He goes, "I told him you can do everything, and you'd be perfect for a truck series, blah, blah, blah." And I just had my son Blake and trying to race, and I was like, all I heard was family insurance and all that stuff, so I was like, you know what, I got nothing to lose. I'll go back and do it. I'll bring my equipment back there, and if I get a chance to race, I'll race it. Take one thing at a time.
So you went from wanting to be a race car driver to being offered some type of job position, and
correct.
You took that and moved back here.
Yeah. So what I did was I was actually started out as the engine tutor / I set the trucks up. Kind of did everything then. And back then, you had to change after practice for the race. You had to change valve springs, so I did that every week, and I set the trucks up in the shop and just did what back then everyone did whatever you had to do. One day you're putting in crush panels, one day you're wiring it. Next day you're setting it up, so you never knew. It was actually fun back then.
Yeah. So did you, maybe I have myself confused. I could have swore I raced against you a few times. So did you?
You may have.
I mean,
you may have.
You raced over here a little bit, didn't you? Or now and then? Or
I did. So I ran Martinsville.
Okay.
I ran a truck at the end of the year at Martinsville that year. Didn't do real well, but I ran, when I went back out west, I got to run Mesa Marin, because I ran there a bunch in Southwest Tour Car. And then after that race, it was kind of way underfunded deal, and they had a home built motor, the whole thing. And I was like, that really opened my eyes. Sit there and ran 25th all day, just driving as hard as you can drive. And I was like, I don't want to do it like this.
Yeah.
And
it's too much like work.
It was just like the chance of getting a good opportunity and running something that was just not good equipment, and not everyone tried that, whatever. It wasn't. I didn't want to drive that way.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what, I just clicked it off and said, you know what, I'm going to raise a family, and I'm pretty good at working on them, and I'm confident in it. So I just flipped the gears, sold all my stuff, and never looked back.